Hey everyone! Today we're diving into one of the most emotional and unbelievable stories to come out of World War II. It's not about a battle. It's not about a general. It's about something much quieter, but just as powerful. A single letter. A letter written by a young American soldier who had no idea that his words would outlive the war, outlast decades, and arrive in a completely different world than the one he knew. This story is about love, time, loss, and the strange ways history sometimes circles back. Let's go back to the early 1940s. America is deep in World War II. Millions of young men are overseas. Europe, the Pacific, North Africa. Among them is a young soldier. We'll call him Tom. Tom is in his early 20s. Like so many others, he didn't plan to be a soldier. He had a life back home, a small town, a job, and most importantly, someone waiting for him. Her name was Margaret. They weren't married yet, but they were close. Really close. The kind of relationship where you don't need big speeches. You just know. Before he shipped out, Tom promised her something simple. I'll write as often as I can. And he did. Letters became their lifeline. Today, we take communication for granted. We text. We call. We video chat. Back then, none of that existed. For soldiers in World War II, letters were everything. They carried love, hope, fear, and sometimes final goodbyes. Mail was often delayed, lost, censored, or damaged. Ships sank. Planes crashed. Entire mail shipments disappeared. So every letter mattered. And one day, Tom sat down to write what would become his most important letter. We don't have the exact original wording, but based on records and similar letters from that time, we know the tone. It wasn't just a casual "how are you?" This was different. Tom wrote about how much he missed Margaret, how uncertain everything felt, and how he kept thinking about the future. He talked about coming home, about building a life, about things that, at that moment, felt both real and impossibly far away. He may have written something like, I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I keep thinking about you. That's what gets me through. There's something powerful about letters like that. Because when soldiers wrote them, they didn't know if they'd get another chance. Tom sealed the letter, addressed it, sent it off, and then, nothing. Somewhere between the battlefield and home, the letter vanished. It didn't reach Margaret. It didn't come back. It simply disappeared. And life kept moving. Back in America, Margaret kept waiting. At first, she didn't think much of it. Mail delays were normal. Weeks turned into months. Some letters arrived. Some didn't. But this one, it never showed up. And over time, things changed. The war ended. Soldiers came home. Tom's story, like many others, took its own path. Maybe he returned. Maybe he didn't. In many cases like this, records vary. But Margaret? She moved forward. Because that's what people had to do. She built a life, got older, watched the world change. The war became history. Now here's where the story takes a turn. Decades later, almost half a century, something unexpected happened. A piece of old mail was discovered. It could have been in a storage facility, a postal archive, or even stuck behind equipment in a long-forgotten building. And among thousands of lost letters, there it was, Tom's letter, still sealed, still intact, still waiting, addressed to Margaret. At this point, postal workers had a decision to make. Do you deliver it? Or is it too late? They chose to try. And somehow, they tracked Margaret down. Now imagine this moment. You're in your 70s or 80s. You've lived an entire life. And suddenly, someone hands you a letter. From 50 years ago. From someone you once loved. From a time that feels like another lifetime. That's exactly what happened. Margaret opened it. Carefully. Slowly. Inside were the words of a young man frozen in time. A man who didn't know how things would turn out. Who didn't know what the next 50 years would bring. And suddenly, she was face to face with her past. Think about that. Not memories. Not photographs. Actual words written in that moment. It's like hearing a voice echo across decades. Stories like this hit hard, especially for people who lived closer to that era, because it reminds us of something simple. Time moves on, but emotions don't always fade the way we expect. That letter didn't just carry ink on paper. It carried a moment in history, a relationship paused in time, and feelings that were never meant to be delayed. For Margaret, it was likely bittersweet, a mix of nostalgia, joy, sadness, and maybe even closure. So why does this story resonate so much? Because it's not really about the letter. It's about what the letter represents. It reminds us that every soldier had a personal story. Every war had millions of quiet moments behind the scenes. And sometimes history isn't about battles. It's about people. It also makes you think, how many other stories like this are still out there? Lost letters, untold messages, moments waiting to be rediscovered. We usually think of time capsules as something intentional. People bury them, planning for the future. But this was accidental. And in some ways, that makes it even more powerful. Because no one planned for this letter to arrive 50 years late. And yet, it did, right when it was meant to. Stories like this remind us to slow down a bit, to appreciate the people in our lives, and maybe even to write things down. Because you never know. A message you send today might mean everything to someone years from now. If this story moved you, share it with someone who'd appreciate it. And if you've ever heard a story like this, about lost letters or long-lost connections, I'd love to hear it in the comments. History isn't just what's in books. Sometimes it shows up in an envelope,